And be sure to tune into WNYC tomorrow. The Republican Party isn't the only institution fighting over the candidacy of Donald Trump. The billionaire New Yorker is also sparking an internal fight at Fox News. Tomorrow on Morning Edition, hear why some are wondering whether the network will continue to represent the voice of conservative America. Join us for that story and all the information you need to start your day tomorrow on Morning Edition. Mostly cloudy tonight. We could see some rain, too. Temperature rising to about 46 overnight with a wind chill between 25 and 30. It's 43 and cloudy right now in the Big Apple at 620.
Support for NPR comes from member stations and from Epson, offering cartridge-free printing with EcoTank, their refillable ink tank printer. EcoTank comes with up to 2 years of ink for printing up to 8,000 pages. Learn more at epson.com/ecotank. And CFP, Certified Financial Planner Professionals, committed to helping people reach their financial goals, from saving for college to planning for retirement. More at letsmakeaplan.org.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Audie Cornish.
And I'm Ari Shapiro. The U.S. government has been criticized for its effort to recover and identify war dead. People say it takes too long to find remains in the field, and the process is too stuck on old science. Now, a part of that effort is showing success that once seemed impossible.
Imagine 208 wooden boxes, each filled with bones, the remains of Americans who served and died during the Korean War. Researchers at a lab in Hawaii are going through those boxes and finally identifying those men.
Jay Price of member station WUNC explains how they are doing it and what it means for the families who've been waiting more than half a century for news.
Life didn't have time to mark Charles Ivy much. The broad-shouldered, strawberry blonde soldier from Vance County, North Carolina, was 21 years old when the Army told his parents he was missing in action in North Korea. That was in 1950. In 1953, they said he was dead, killed in an ambush. In 1955, his mother wrote a letter to the Army, a physical description of her son.
He had a perfect set of teeth.
That's Gail LaRue, Charles's niece, reading the letter.
He had a slight case of pneumonia from measles when he was 12 years old. The only scar was a chickenpox scar right under left
There's
eye.
something hopeful in her mention of the scar, a scar in flesh, a hope, however faint, that she thinks he might be found alive. Years stretched into decades. Ivy's mother died, his father too, and one by one, 10 of his 11 siblings passed away. The last brother, Harold Ivy, still lives in North Carolina. He's lost a leg to diabetes and is on dialysis. He says his brother was fatalistic about going off to war.
And he said before he got shipped overseas, he didn't think he'd be coming back home because it was terrible over there.
Then last fall, 2 soldiers came to Harold Ivy's home to deliver the official news. His brother's remains had been identified.
I think everybody was totally amazed that after all this time, they had found his body, or his remains rather. It was very few bones that was missing.
So this is the K208 lab floor.
This is the place at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, where Charles Ivy's bones ended up, along with those of hundreds more troops lost in North Korea. It's called the K208 lab, K for Korea and 208 for the number of boxes North Korea gave the U.S. in the early 1990s. The Koreans said each box held the remains of one American service member, but that wasn't true.
Most often there's remains of many, many different soldiers represented in each of the boxes, and it's not unusual for there to be no 2 bones from the same soldier in a box.
John Byrd is the lead scientist in the military's efforts to identify the remains of American troops lost in battle. Those 208 boxes delivered by North Korea held the bones of about 400 men. There were another 112 boxes of jumbled bones that U.S. teams recovered from mass graves in North Korea. So a total of more than 600 men, their remains all scrambled together.
In terms of the size of the project and the condition of the remains, I think it's the hardest case in the world.
Now they're solving it.
I'm Jenny Jin, and I'm a forensic anthropologist.
Jen runs the K208 project.
So my job is to come up with the best strategy to make an identification, because it's really different case by case.
For years, it was slow going. When the boxes arrived, there were so many bones and so few clues.
We couldn't do much for about 10 years, and then technology advanced, and that's when we saw the potential of using mitochondrial DNA.
Mitochondrial DNA. It can often be found in bones, even those buried for decades. It was the tool they needed, a first step towards identifying the men from thousands and thousands of bones. But, and here's the part where you should forget what you've seen about DNA on TV. The mitochondrial kind just isn't very precise.
My favorite analogy is it works like last names.
Last names are helpful to a point, but a lot of people share last names, like Smith or Jones. One mitochondrial DNA sequence matches 811 of the thousands missing from the Korean War. The ivory-colored bones of 4 of those men are laid out on a table in the lab.
My job is to come up with the 4 names out of that 811 guys to see which one these guys could be.
So the mitochondrial DNA narrowed the search. Then Jen had to sort the bones. That was step 2. Which left femur matches which right femur? Or did 2 bones form a good joint?
So if you look at this bone, this is an upper arm bone, so it fits like that.
After all that sorting, Jen and her team are pretty sure which of these bones on the table belong together.
We believe this is one person, that's one person, that's another one, that's the 4th individual.
But they still have to figure out who the person was. What was his name? Sometimes there are dental records or chest x-rays to check for a match.
Sometimes if that person was very tall or very short, that gives us a really good clue.
Then, when possible, there's a third step. Test for nuclear DNA. On detective shows, that's the kind that can all but ensure an individual identification, but it can be hard to find in the old bones. And when it is there, it's often incomplete. Still, combined with other evidence, it can seal an identification. In Charles Ivey's case, technicians found nuclear DNA in 2 leg bones in his jaw and checked his sister's samples, hoping for a useful match. And they got it. A solid match is always a big moment for the scientists.
That makes my day.
And Jen has a personal connection to the men she's trying to identify. American troops helped her family flee North Korea during the war, just a month after Charles Ivey vanished there.
And thanks to them, my grandfather survived. And he came out of North Korea, and here I am today. The least I can do to their families is to identify these guys and send them home.
It's slow, meticulous work. One time, Jen needed to clear her head. She drove to Walmart and bought some display boards. She propped them up in the lab. And now they're covered with photos of the men whose remains her team has identified.
These guys are near and dear to me because I know them by bones.
In the 10 years after the first boxes arrived, the military identified just 1 man a year. Last year alone, Jen's team identified 29, including a broad-shouldered soldier from North Carolina.
Charles Ivey, who was killed during the Korean War in 1950.
On a sunny morning, almost 65 years to the day after Ivey was killed, Gail LaRue, his niece, and Harold Ivey, his brother, came to Raleigh-Durham International Airport.
Today, Corporal Ivey will continue his final journey home to Henderson, North Carolina.
Well, I'm feeling a little sad, but I'm also feeling happy that he's being returned home, and we can get this past us.
In a few moments, members of the North Carolina Army National Guard.
Harold Ivey turned his electric wheelchair toward the elevator to the runway apron. The Delta jet taxied up between 2 fire trucks that shot an arch of water over it that made a rainbow. The flag-covered casket was unloaded from the aircraft. Harold Ivey and Gail LaRue each put a hand on that flag and bowed their heads. They are among the few still alive who care that Charles is home. There's someone else who cares, back in Hawaii. That's where Jenny Jen in the lab is printing up a new batch of photos for her display board. Among them is a picture of a young Charles Ivey. For NPR News, I'm Jay Price.
Stay tuned. Marketplace is up next here on WNYC, WNYC.org. One of America's most beloved pastimes, baseball, could have some unexpected side effects on its youngest players.
The damage that's coming in children's arms these days is unlike anything they would see even 10 years ago. And a lot of that has to do with how much they're pitching and how hard they're throwing.
More on Marketplace, that's coming up next here on WNYC. Mostly cloudy for the rest of tonight. We could see some rain after midnight. The temperature will rise overnight to the mid-40s with a wind chill low between 25 and 30. More rain tomorrow through most of the day. We could see some thunderstorms in the afternoon as well. The high, though, getting up to the high 50s by the afternoon. Right now it's 43, cloudy in Central Park. You're listening to WNYC, WNYC.org at 6:30.
WNYC support comes from Geico, offering auto insurance coverage for cars, trucks, or SUVs and providing 24/7 customer service. More information on auto insurance at geico.com or 1-800-947-AUTO. Marketplace is supported by Progressive Insurance, working to make progress for more than 75 years. When big business turns into big activism. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace. Marketplace is supported by Battelle, advanced technology and analytics designed to improve patient outcomes, safety, and quality. At Battelle, it can be done. Battelle.org/health. Marketplace's coverage of wealth and poverty issues is supported by the Ford Foundation, working with visionaries on the front lines of social change worldwide. More at fordfoundation.org. In San Francisco, I'm Molly Wood, sitting in for Kai Risdall. It's Wednesday, April 6th. So glad you could join us this evening. Let's start with that question of big business and activism. North Carolina has been taking heat recently for a law that forbids transgendered people from using bathrooms other than those assigned to their biological sex. It's also preventing local governments from passing non-discrimination laws in order to protect LGBT people. Now, as a result, PayPal canceled a planned office in Charlotte that was worth 400 jobs. And CEOs from Apple to Yelp to IBM to Cisco and Facebook are all lobbying for the law's repeal. And as Marketplace's Sabri Benishore reports, it's no coincidence that so many of these businesses are tech companies.
IBM, Apple, Yelp, Airbnb, Lyft, Salesforce, they've all called for the repeal of North Carolina's law. Netflix actually said it would stop producing shows in Georgia if that state passed legislation viewed as anti-LGBT.
These laws make it much more challenging to attract and retain workers.
Dina Fidas is with the Human Rights Campaign. Tech companies in particular have a challenge when it comes to recruitment.
Tech talent is at a premium and is perceived as in very, very short supply.
China Gorman is a consultant, and she says these companies depend on people and attracting them. Competition for talent among tech firms is incredibly intense.
There's another layer here, and that's corporate culture.
Tech companies also tend to have very inclusive corporate cultures. John Sumser is principal analyst for HR Examiner.
There's an extraordinary level of tolerance, even encouragement of difference.
In part, he says that's because these companies believe diversity improves problem solving. China Gorman, the consultant, says the strongly tolerant corporate culture makes it hard for many companies not to say something.
Leaders in organizations have choices to make. Are those really our values? Is that how we really relate to our people and relate to our customers? Or are they situational and not so much?
More than 90 companies, and not just tech businesses, are calling for North Carolina to repeal its law. In New York, I'm Sabri Benishore for Marketplace.
Today, pharmaceutical giant Pfizer announced that its tax inversion deal with Ireland-based Allergan is gone, baby, gone. It was killed by new rules from the Treasury Department that make it much harder for all American companies to move their headquarters overseas to avoid taxes. Marketplace's Dan Gorenstein digs into whether the tax inversion itself is dead.
President Barack Obama has made it plain. He wants companies to stop heading overseas for tax inversions. Height Securities, Henrietta Treyes.
Inversions are significantly harder now than they were 2 days ago.
In essence, Treasury makes it more difficult for U.S. companies to find the right foreign partner and makes it more difficult for U.S. companies to lower their tax rate after an inversion takes place. According to an estimate from Congress, all but ending inversions and clamping down on the practice known as earnings stripping would generate $90 billion in additional tax revenue from corporations over the next decade. USC professor Edward Kleinbard says Treasury's proposed rules don't go that far.
What Treasury did is definitely worth tens of billions of dollars to tax revenues. It's south of 90 and north of 10.
There's little doubt that this week's move from the federal government will have some kind of chilling effect on inversions, but attorney Gordon Kaplan suggests it's foolish to start writing any obits.
I am highly confident that there are very smart people all over this country that are experts in this area, looking at the regs very carefully and coming up with other strategies that will work for the next deal.
Kaplan says the reality is Treasury did what it can do. He says to solve the tax inversion problem, where billions of dollars leave this country, Congress must take on meaningful tax reform, something he says a large swath of businesses, including Silicon Valley and the Chamber of Commerce, are pushing for. I'm Dan Gorenstein for Marketplace.
The Fed minutes from March are out, and it seems like, and I know this is a surprise, or maybe it's not, there is not much appetite to raise rates this month. On Wall Street today, a little up, a little down, but mostly up. We'll have the details when we do the numbers. The inescapable influence of this. Don't even try to pretend you don't know what that sound is. American Idol is saying goodbye. The two-part series finale starts tonight, and whether you are cheering or crying as Idol takes a bow, the power of that one show, the money it generated, the careers it launched, really can't be overstated. Here to talk about it is Adrienne Hill. She covers entertainment for Marketplace. Hi, Adrienne.
Hey, Molly.
Okay, so American Idol, has there been another show that has such an economic halo? I mean, we'll talk about the cultural implications, but weren't a lot of people in a lot of different areas making money as a result of the show?
Yeah, American Idol was really printing money for Fox and the show's creators and some of its stars. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in ad revenue, millions of dollars in iTunes music sales. There were live Idol tours and brazen product placement. You probably remember, if you've seen Idol, those giant red Coke cups always sitting in front of the judges.
But it also changed the whole TV landscape, right?
It really did in so many ways. So Survivor and The Amazing Race were on the air before American Idol. So was The Real World. But when Idol blew up for Fox, reality TV shifted into high gear, especially the TV talent show. Networks were scrambling to figure out what to put on the air against American Idol. They were scrambling to find their own version of it. And more than a dozen singing competitions sort of sprang up in its wake. Lots of them short-lived, you probably never heard of, and some successes. You know, Nashville Star, X Factor, The Voice, which is still on the air now. In so many ways, the show changed our relationship with television.
Way to change our relationship with television? How's that?
It did. We were in charge. We could vote. We, the audience, could decide the outcome. And while I fess up here, did you ever vote? Have you ever voted in American Idol?
Maybe once or twice.
I'll happily admit to casting a vote or two for Clay Aiken back in 2003. In many ways, American Idol ushered in this whole new way of interacting with television. Television stopped being a passive medium. There were times when Idol would get more than 120 million viewer votes in a week, which are nearly presidential election numbers. Kind of mind-blowing if you think about it.
Yeah, and so then what impact did that have sort of broadly in our culture?
The magic of American Idol, I think, was the potential for any of us, any of our neighbors, to be a star. The dream that somebody would finally see me for the talent that I am. Maybe a dream that all of us have was really front and center in American Idol. And I think there's a good argument to be made here that belief that stardom could be sort of self-made and based on talent instead of connections really helped bolster the YouTube culture, the YouTube generation, which didn't even exist when American Idol was created.
Well, and that's not the only tech tie-in, right? You could also argue that American Idol changed our relationships with our phones.
Yeah, there's this fascinating American Idol, it seems, based on some informal polling that AT&T did, so let's take this with a grain of salt, but the show introduced a lot of folks to sending text messages, which is kind of wild. Here's Ryan Seacrest actually explaining to people how to text in an early season of the show.
Just go to message screen, type in VOTE, V-O-T-E, and send it to Idols01. No space, just Idols01.
Kind of like this. And then send.
Go to message screen. That is where we all begin. AT&T found in this poll that 22% of people said they learned to text in order to vote on American Idol, which is remarkable in its own sort of world-changing lesson.
Yeah, no kidding. Also, I wish you all could see the video
so that you could get a load of the phone that Ryan Seacrest is actually using. That's Marketplace's Adrienne Hill. Thanks so much, Adrienne.
Thanks, Molly.
You may not know this, I actually did not until very recently. Law enforcement officials have the right to take your property or cash if they think it's related to a criminal act. They don't have to charge you with a crime, they can just take the stuff, and they don't always have to give it back. In fact, the U.S. Justice Department recently announced that it's resuming a program that lets local police departments keep up to 80% of the assets that they seize. That's got some people wondering if there's a financial incentive for police to take your things, especially since civil asset forfeiture, as it's formally known, has been on the rise. From WABE in Atlanta, LEU reports.
It could be done.
In their Florida coast home, Alda Gentile tries to get her 4-year-old grandson, Daniel, to sit and eat his lunch.
Hey, come here. Okay, get your laptop. 4 years old is getting his laptop.
Gentile moved to Florida about 3 years ago from New York. She was working as a limo driver then and says she wanted a change. So she, her son, and 1-year-old grandson at the time drove down to scope out some condos in Florida, taking about $12,000 in cash. They didn't find a place at first and began a drive back home.
This is when the nightmare started, Carl. We were singing Itsy Bitsy Spider to the baby, and suddenly we see sirens came out of nowhere.
Police stopped them across the Florida border in South Georgia, allegedly for speeding. She says for hours, officers made them sit by the side of the road while they questioned why she had the money and asked if she was a drug dealer. They eventually seized her cash, even though they didn't find any drugs in the car. She was never charged with a crime.
I was so baffled at the whole thing. And I remember thinking that you guys are not police officers, you're just pirates with badges. That's what you remind me of right now.
Gentile got her money back a week later and eventually sued the police. But in Georgia and some other states, officers can seize money and property from people under suspicion without charging them with a crime. It's a process known as civil forfeiture. Some say police in states with stricter laws can also get in on the cash through a federal program known as equitable sharing. It allows local law enforcement to keep up to 80% of assets seized in conjunction with the federal government. The money can be used for things like bulletproof vests or patrol cars, and critics say that creates a profit motive.
Now, everyone agrees that law enforcement should be fully funded. The question is whether or not law enforcement should have a financial incentive in taking people's property.
Wesley Hutt is an attorney with the Institute for Justice, an organization fighting for civil forfeiture reform. He says asset forfeiture has exploded over the last decade. In 2014, the Justice Department seized about $4.5 billion. And he says it can be hard for people to get their money back because it costs too much to hire a lawyer.
They don't have the money to fight. They don't have the will to fight. Many people simply give up.
Officials say the program helps to punish criminals involved in money laundering and organized crime. Kendall Day is with the U.S. Justice Department.
You need to both attack and prosecute individuals at the same time you take away the instrumentalities of crime and the proceeds of crime. That's the only way for a sophisticated transnational organization that you're going to make a dent.
Those in law enforcement say most seizures are justified, and if things do go awry, there are remedies to allow for people to get their money back. Louis Dekmar is with the International Association of Chiefs of Police.
I can tell you that professional law enforcement and policing, is committed to doing right by its citizens, but also at the same time ensuring its communities are protected.
The DOJ last year limited its equitable sharing program under Attorney General Eric Holder to address concerns of abuse, but critics say that's not enough. Meanwhile, lawmakers in some states are working to restrict civil forfeiture laws to allow someone to be convicted with a crime before losing their money. I'm Ellie Yu for Marketplace.
Almost romanticize it, like, hey, I had Tommy John, I'm a real ball player now.
Why that guy Tommy John should be on your mind next time you watch a baseball game. But first, let's do the numbers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 112.6% to close at 17,716. The NASDAQ picked up 76 points, 1.5% to finish at 4920. And the S&P 500 added 21 points, 1%. It closed at 2066. Don't you feel good? It has been a day for deal busters. As we mentioned, fallout over inversions ended the merger plans of Pfizer and Allergan. No one was too broken up over that breakup. Pfizer shares improved 5%. Allergan added 3 4/10%. Johnson & Johnson rose 4/10%. The Department of Justice filed suit to block Halliburton's bid to buy oil services firm Baker Hughes on antitrust grounds. Halliburton gushed up nearly 6%. As a result, bonds fell. The yield on the 10-year T-note rose to 1.75%. And you're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Captricity, cloud software designed to replace the manual process of capturing and transforming handwritten documents into digital data. Captricity helps insurance, healthcare, and government and nonprofit organizations go digital without disruption. More at captricity.com. And by the Society for Human Resource Management, HR professionals rely on SHRM's competency-based certifications to help make the new workplace work. Learn more at shrmcertification.org.
WNYC receives support from Virtusa Polaris, a global service provider of IT consulting, technology, and outsourcing services, working to help financial services firms become market leaders. VirtusaPolaris.com.
Hey boo-boos, it's Phoebe Robinson. And I'm Jessica Williams. We're the hosts of WNYC Studios' newest podcast, Two Dope Queens. And we get real. Well, we can't say how real we get, for all we don't even have a kid in the room.
Yeah, we don't want to make it weird and upset anyone. But you really should listen to our weekly podcast. We've got New York's best stand-up and storytellers, too. Come on over to Two Dope Queens, wherever you get your podcasts, or listen on the WNYC app.
Stay tuned. You're listening to Marketplace here on WNYC and WNYC.org. We'll see mostly cloudy skies for the rest of tonight. A chance of showers in the early morning hours. The temperature rising to about 46 overnight, with a wind chill between 25 and 30. This is WNYC.
You're listening to Marketplace. I'm Molly Wood. Let's take a turn toward tech. The big trend in technology is connected devices, things like the smart home, gadgets that all talk to each other so you can remotely control your garage door or your lights or your alarm system. The market is still new, and one of the earliest devices that could control your smart home was a gadget called the Revolve. It was pretty smooth, popular enough actually that Nest Labs bought it, and now they're turning it off. A note on the Revolve homepage told people that as of May 15th, their $300 Revolve smart home hubs, the actual hardware in their houses, won't work anymore at all. So now what? Marketplace's Andy Euler reports.
Earlier this week, Arlo Gilbert wrote a blog post. It said this: on May 15th, my house will stop working. He's been founding tech startups for about 20 years and calls himself a home automation nut. He owns a Revolve smart home hub. He says he doesn't think the shutdown is malicious, but the circumstances give him pause.
You know, had Revolve itself shut down, I don't think anyone would be angry. I think we'd be disappointed. But the fact that it's owned by this mega corporation is what's infuriating.
A couple of years ago, Revolve got bought by the Alphabet Corporation, Google. As a result, all of the Revolve devices run on proprietary servers. That's what's being shut down. Robert Scoble writes about technology and owns a Revolve hub.
We knew that this specific device was very interconnected and to work properly required other devices, and that's all good and done. We didn't understand that Google could remotely turn it off.
That's what Revolve customers are upset about. It's not like the device doesn't work anymore.
It's a business decision. I doubt it's some sort of compatibility decision.
Evan Kaplan is CEO of Influx Data. They provide back-end technology for connected devices.
And what you'd hope in these sort of situations is the people who have the hardware would get an automatic free upgrade to whatever was coming next. That's what you'd hope.
Arlo Gilbert says the company reached out to him on his blog to try to help.
Because I made some noise. When I think what they should be doing is helping everybody who bought a product from them, not just the one who's making noise about it.
Because the investment isn't just $300. It takes a lot of time to set it up. And after you program it, the device contains a lot of your personal data. I'm Andy Euler for Marketplace.
Look, I try to stay away from cliches as much as the next radio host, which is to say, I use them when I need them. And come on. The image of the dairy industry is unavoidable. You're thinking, Wisconsin, cheese hats, the happy cows here in California. But in fact, I'm here to tell you, you should be thinking Saudi Arabia. Yep, that country has some of the largest farms in the world. And it takes a lot of food and water to keep those cows happy. That's kind of a problem when you live in the desert. And so the industry relies on a lot of imported crops, like alfalfa, that, as it turns out, mostly comes from the U.S. From the Marketplace Sustainability Desk, Jed Kim reports.
Say you're in Dubai and you've got a sudden hankering for yogurt. It'll probably come from Saudi Arabia.
If you travel throughout the Gulf, you'll see Saudi dairy products all over the place.
Jean-Francois Seznek is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Feeding Saudi cattle isn't easy, especially since the government announced it'll stop growing all fodder within 3 years to save water. That means imports.
If they need food for these cattle, well, maybe it's worth the money because they have to feed the darn things, and it may make some sense to bring it somehow by container loads to Saudi Arabia.
Africa looked like a potential growing field. In 2009, about 150,000 square miles of land changed hands, but Robert Tashima at the Oxford Business Group says most of those deals haven't borne crops.
There were only probably about 20% that had actually made it to the farming stage even a couple of years later.
Because of infrastructure problems or questions of ownership. That may be why Saudi dairy company Almarai is buying land in Arizona and California, 14,000 acres so far.
The higher upfront costs of investing in someplace like Arizona or California are warranted because they have fewer challenges to face.
Much of the